Hey everybody, welcome back to the HVAC ADHD Vodcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Begley. Today we're talking with Brad Cooper from Arkansas State University-Beebe, where he serves as the Advanced HVAC Instructor. But Brad's not just an instructor, he's somebody who grew up in the trade, owned and operated an HVAC company, and now spends his time helping the next generation of technicians entering the field. In this episode, we get into the real challenges facing HVAC education today, from the labor shortage and technician retention to airflow, load calculations, commissioning, and how technology like MeasureQuick is changing the way contractors support their teams in the field. We also talk about the disconnect between code requirements and actual enforcement, why so many systems are still oversized, and what the industry needs to do differently if we want better outcomes for contractors and homeowners alike. This one turned into a really solid conversation about where the trade has been, where it's headed, and how education has to evolve if we're going to keep it up. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the HVAC ADHD Vodcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Begley. Today we're here with Brad Cooper from the Arkansas City HVAC-Beebe. Brad, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do, what your company is, and why you're here today.
My name is Brad Cooper. I'm with Arkansas State University-Beebe. I'm the advanced HVAC instructor here. I teach, build the curriculum, and I am also part of HVAC School, help contribute with some of their videos and editing.
Okay, tell us a little bit about your background. Like, how'd you wind up teaching HVAC? What was your pathway through the trade?
When I was 9 years old, I rode with my dad for the first time in his company truck. He owned his own company in 1986 and went out riding with him, taking pictures. By 10, I was insulating ductwork. To say heating and air runs in my veins, it really does. Both my brothers work in it. One of my sons work in it. And of course, my father owned a company and taught me and my brothers how to do heating and air. And then long story short, my father passed away. I ran the business for another 4 or 5 years. And when the Arkansas State University asked if I knew somebody that wanted to teach. And I was like, you know what? I think I'd want to teach. And I started teaching 5 years ago and just fell in love with the teaching aspect of it.
So you sold the company to your brothers, or you guys were owners, or how did all that work out?
I ended up passing off the customer base to another company that I trusted when I went to work here. It was too much. The first year I taught and worked, and it was just too much. It was getting off at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon and then going to work until dark every night it was a bit much.
It is a bit much. So the market down there in Arkansas, were you seeing, is it mostly a heat pump and electric furnace, or AC and electric furnace? What do you guys mostly see there in Arkansas?
Really, it's a big split. When you hit subdivisions around here, our gas company will come in and they will supply gas to every house and every meter for free, just to get them to put in gas furnaces and gas hot water heaters. And so that's a big builders. It's hard for them to pass up that because they're getting a lot of free stuff there. So they're usually going to put that in. And so it's a mix. You get half heat pump, half gas furnace.
What's your guys' weather like down there? What's the climate zone?
We are 2 weeks out of the year, we get down to about 20, and 2 weeks out of the year, we get up to about 105. But other than that, we are usually above freezing and below 100 most of the time. I can't remember what zone we're in.
What's your design temps?
Indoor and outdoor?
Just outdoor.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I meant winter and summer. I believe it's 95 in the summer, and I'd have to look.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's similar, sort of, a little bit close to what Knoxville is here. We're not 95, we're like 91 in the summer and like 18 degrees, I think, in the winter or something like that, like right around there. It's probably close to that. So that's the same. We see there's like a lot of 80% gas furnaces, and there's also a lot of package units that shoot underneath the house into the crawl space. So then you got just whatever, it may be a package electric heat and gas heat, or electric AC and gas heat, or package. Now the newer package units do have heat pumps available to them. You can get a package heat pump. I don't know how much people are really selling those. And then you just see a ton of split systems and some gas furnaces, a lot of heat pumps, a lot of electric furnaces still around. around here in play that could easily be switched out to heat pumps if it's not like some kind of wiring issue with multifamily or something like that. Yeah. What do you in school? What is the curriculum that you teach in the HVAC school? Is it a full, just tell me how the course is set up.
When I got here 5 years ago, there was 8 classes that made the course for a technical certificate. And so it's a very basic course. It gets the students a lot more than you learn in your first couple of years. You get the basic brazing, flowing nitrogen, pulling a vacuum, all the hands-on stuff they really need. And so what I did was I split the class up half hands-on, half learning. And so they learn how to do something, and then we turn around and actually do it in class. And since I've been here, I have added an associate's program that's not quite fully intact yet, but the classes are there. And so now I'm teaching, like my air distribution 1 class is over static pressure, checking CFM, and building ductwork. The second air distribution class is psychrometrics. It's like more on the psychrometric chart. I actually use, I think it's psychrometric. It's one of HVAC Excellence books that Eugene Silberstein wrote. Psychrometric without tears. So
Okay.
That's my main book for that class. And so I start off basic, like they need to know how to do ductwork. They need to know how to check airflow. They need static pressure. But then the second year, that's when we start really get into more of the technical stuff with the psychrometrics.
Okay, so it's a structured, going to be an associate. It's a certificate program at the college right now, but it's going to end up being an associate degree for the students as well as an HVAC certificate, so they get both out of it when they take the pathway. So is there an extra value to having the associate's degree, or does it just give them a longer time to learn stuff like airflow and the other things that you talked about that maybe you don't go in depth in a pure HVAC certificate course?
Yeah, the associate's degree is 2 things. It gives them more hands-on experience, because that's one thing I'm big on is the hands-on. If you go through class, it's going to take you a year to really get familiar with it if you go outside and do your hands-on. And so the second year is really getting the extra hands-on, and it's going to be more geared around your technical people that are going to be doing service work, the people that might want to do more with air conditioning, want to own a company. But for somebody that's just wanting to run ductwork, somebody that's just wanting to install units, that technical certificate's a good one. And then the associates also, one thing that I've noticed, I grew up in heating and air, so I never went and got my degree until I started teaching. And I started teaching, and I had all my stuff on LinkedIn. I had all my experience. I had all my certifications, all that stuff up there. And then as soon as I put that I had an associate's degree, I started getting recruiters calling me, wanting me to get jobs. The recruiter said there was something about the associate's degree just showed that you could complete something. And so there was a lot of jobs that they want the associates just to see that you can complete something, or a bachelor's. It's not necessarily that they want you to have a degree. They don't think you're smarter. They just think you're actually going to sit and do something. You're going to be there for a while. You're not somebody that's going to bounce around from job to job.
So are you talking about recruiting inside the trades or for jobs outside the actual, what we would call the trades, like the pure trade of turning a wrench or out there in the field?
I am talking more about the outside edge of our field. Like I believe some of the data centers, they're wanting people with degrees to run those. And I said that, I think it gives them a leg up having an HVAC degree. And that's where it comes. It gives them a leg up. It shows them that they went above and beyond. And especially for contributing roles and instructor roles, the degrees really matter.
Absolutely, 100% for that.
Right now,
Does your degree include anything with design, like the front end of the stuff, or is it right now just driven by the trade end of it?
Design as in
JSD
engineering.
and engineering and stuff like that. Yeah, at least being able to understand manual JSD like 101 or something like that.
Yeah, that we do that. This year we went over. It was my mind just went blank. It's one of the softwares that you use on the iPad. And then we went over Manual J, but the students didn't get to play with the Manual J like they did the one on the iPad. But I think you may know Jason Julian, but he came up here and actually did a class for me and went over. Do you know the different load calculation software?
We got Ampli, we got Conduit Tech, we got Quick Model, Conduit.
I think it was Conduit he brought up here, and he taught a class on that for the students. And so that's the stuff. Their basic classes, I want them to get out here and understand that windows, doors, bad insulation, holes in the wall, that's your big heat gains. The second year is when we get into, okay, now how much heat gain is that window costing you? How much heat gain is your ducts gaining in the attic? All that stuff.
Okay. I like it. That's a much more in-depth class, it sounds like. Most of the pure certificate classes are mostly to just get you out there understanding the refrigerant cycle, understanding the EPA laws, and turning a wrench a little bit. They don't really go into too much of the design and a lot of the stuff that really makes the stuff work. If you do it right on the front end, then you stop having a lot of the problems that you have on the back end and don't have as many callbacks and things like that. I think it's important to include that. I haven't talked to them recently, but I was in a conversation with the college down here, the trade college, to try to just get a little one-off design class where we just come in one day and we just expose them to the design stuff and say, hey, this isn't part of this class, but it should be. And here's some stuff that you definitely should take the time to learn once you get your certificate and stuff, because it's the way the HVAC's been, the way it's taught right now is the old school, just get out there and do it way, which we still need that, but we need to get guys going quicker and we need them to understand the proper procedures a lot quicker too. I think there's a lot of revamping in the HVAC education space that needs to be done. The way you guys are doing it is one way to do it, which is make it a longer class, offer a little bit more of a carrot, which is the associate degree, to get people to go through it that way. The one thing I think that the college I went to did right that a lot of colleges don't have is their second year was co-op. You had part of that one whole entire semester of that second year was co-op. You had to go out and get a co-op and work in the space or work in the trade and apply what you learned and show that you could apply it. And they did it for everything. It wasn't just for the trades. I was there for environmental engineering, and you had to do co-op in the environmental engineering field your whole entire last portion of your second year there before you got your degree. They had a renewable energy program. It was the same way. You had to go out and work with solar panels or work with some kind of renewable wind or something like that before they would let you graduate. So I think that, like college, if you have that hybrid model there, especially with something that's so hands-on like the trades, I think it becomes a super, super valuable way to learn stuff for these guys. And even probably most companies, if you're already working with them, they're just going to hire you on. They're not going to tell you to go work somewhere else if they really like what you're doing there and you're a good fit.
We actually have a meeting next Thursday here with the state. They're coming in, they're fixing to give a bunch of money to all the contractors to do apprenticeships. And so we got a big meeting Thursday. I'm super excited about that because that's the school, the associate's degree by itself matters a little bit. Your hands-on, to me, by itself means a little bit. You put both of them together, and especially if you had a good boss and a good teacher, you're going to be a great tech. But you got to have the hands-on.
Are you guys is the apprenticeship going to be worked in with the degree program, or is it after and separate, or how's that going to work?
Right now, I'm not sure. That's what our meeting Thursday.
Okay.
I think they got it started about 6 months ago, and the last 6 months have been weeding out all the exact rules of how everything's going to work. And so I think that's what they're coming Thursday to tell us, is exactly how all this is going to lay out. So I'm hoping we're going to be able to add it directly to the class.
What do you see the biggest challenge for these kids that come out of your course once they start working and maintaining themselves in the trades? And for the people that are out there hiring these guys, what do you think the biggest challenge in just getting the labor force that we need out there is, based on what you from the educator space?
As far as what they need to know or what they need to get out there and do?
Just the biggest challenge of retention in general. So like, I guess the context is we have a big labor shortage in the trades right now. Everybody that I talk to is, we just need people, man. It doesn't matter where they come from. We need to find somebody to hire. Busy season's coming. We have a fraction of what we need, or we can't keep people. We can't keep competent people. These guys out of HVAC school suck. I hear so much stuff about like, why people can't keep people, why people in the trade, specifically HVAC HVAC cannot keep staff, and it's a big ongoing issue. And I just was wondering if you had any thoughts about is there something that we could be doing better while we're teaching these kids? Is there a way to get them started faster and learning quicker, where operating quicker at full speed, so that people feel like they want to keep them around? Some of the stuff I hear, they just never catch on. Once they come out of school, they think that's the end of it, and they're standing around on their phones, or they're doing this or they're doing that. They just never really get into the flow of work and actually pick up and become a good tech for us, or a good installer, or whatever their role ends up being. That seems to be an ongoing issue for these business owners, the contractors.
And that's where, when I started teaching 5 years ago, I come in, ask them what they needed. They told me, I started teaching, and then I went back to the advisory board again and said, okay, what am I missing here? And first they was like, they don't know how to talk to us. They're rude, they're pompous, there's all attitude problems. And I was like, okay. So I started teaching attitude in the class, how you should talk to people. I was already teaching soft skills, but I was doing it for customers. I wasn't doing it for your boss. And so I had to start teaching soft skills for bosses. Then now my big issue has been, they're calling me complaining that these guys aren't ready for attics and underfloors. You need to get a 120-degree room for them to go sit in for a few minutes and actually change something or braze something. And so that's my next goal, is to start bringing in hot rooms, and they need to crawl under a house once or twice. They need to know what they're getting into before they get there. And telling them is one thing, but again, hands-on, you setting up in an attic for 20 minutes while you braze something, that's a completely different story.
It's Navy SEALs for HVAC techs. We got to put them through it so that they know what they're going through, because they get out there, they're not ready for these attics. These guys are soft these days. I don't know. And the other side of it is a lot of kids today aren't coming up like the kids that were in the trades earlier. They came up working outside with their fathers, up under cars, in attics, in the woods, whatever that guy was doing, they were doing too. And now kids are really stuck in their rooms playing video games with their moms down in the kitchen instead of out with their dads. So they never really, you make an awesome point. They have never really experienced the hardship, and that may be one of the things that they get in and get right back out. Man, this ain't what I signed up for. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't think I had 5 hot days in a row. I'd rather be playing video games. Do you see technology helping with any of this at all? Is there a way, like the technology that's coming online, whether it be MeasureQuick or Conduit Tech or anything, any of the AI stuff, do you think that is going to help with employee retention in any way, shape, or form?
I think it should, especially with MeasureQuick, where you can be sitting in your office right now looking at what I'm doing here in Arkansas on what a unit I'm working on. And so, yeah, I think that stuff, we're going to be able to get some of these students. I had one in particular this year that was a brilliant guy. He learned all about air conditioning. He just doesn't really want to go out and work in it. And so that's understandable, but he needs to be engineer. He needs to be tech support. Tech support makes pretty good money usually for most of these companies. And it's like, tech support, he could be great at tech support if he doesn't want to go out in the field. And that's what I tell the students. You don't have to go under houses and in attics, but that's where you're going to start. You're going to have to get the basics out of the way. But then after you get a couple of years of that, you can get out of attics and go do something else. Or like we talked about the engineering part, we have another school here in Arkansas. We're a 2-year school, so we don't offer anything higher, but there's a bachelor's degree that's heavy in HVAC pretty close to us. And so they can even do engineering for mechanical engineering here in the state pretty close.
So it's an interesting point about the techs and being able to sit in the office and use MeasureQuick, and you use the term called tech support. So that's something that I don't normally hear guys talking about as a position inside a shop. But I think that it is a position that's going to exist, or else the worst thing that could happen is your front office support, your CSRs, they become your default technical support, and then they're answering questions and try to fill guys in the field. Service manager is the service manager, but I guess let's talk about it like this. Is service manager now tech support, or is tech support a position that works under service manager to support the technology that's in the field and the way the guys are working in the field? Because it's super interesting. I have not heard this particular terminology applied except from behind the counter. The tech support is something I associate with the guys behind the counter at the OEM shops when you go there and you're asking for help and they're back there trying to help you, or you call in and are trying to help you. But inner office tech support is a very interesting concept. I think that's something worth exploring. And what was the basis of using it? Is that a real position that you've seen, or like, how does that work?
It's one that I'd seen not here locally. It was at a bigger company. And it was a bigger company that had 2 or 3 tech supports that had access to all their techs. And I don't remember which company it was. But the great thing about all this is, like you were saying, if you've got a company that's got 5 people, your tech support is probably going to be the owner or maybe the second in command. And so they're going to have to know, okay, you can only sign me up for 3 service calls today because I'm going to have to help other people. But then if you have a company that's got 10 people, now maybe your service manager is also tech support. And so he's just going to have to carry his laptop wherever he goes so he can pull stuff up, which I'm assuming even now, MeasureQuick, you probably pull it up on your phone and be able to check it out.
Yeah, tablet at a minimum. Yeah, for sure. Yep.
And again, the problem with that is MeasureQuick is so dang detailed, it's hard. You almost don't need tech support with MeasureQuick, but that's where I thought, and the more people you get, you could have dedicated 1 or 2 people doing tech support. And of course, I think they should have another role in the company. That's what I think it's great about it, is you could have somebody that, now CSRs, it'd be hard to have a CSR be tech support too, I think.
Yeah, it is hard, but you see it happen a lot. A lot of times these guys, they by default get thrown into the fire and they're the one answering the technical questions that they definitely 100% should not be answering. That is why I'm like, it can't be that person because that person has to deal with the customers. They got a whole different job to do. But I think there is some value in having somebody that's really good with MeasureQuick and really good on the technical side and understands everything about everything out in the field back in the office with the tablet, and then they can, like you said, stream the MeasureQuick screen right to that guy. And he's, I'm putting out this fire. Okay, hold on. I got another fire to put out. Because if you got a big enough company, you could make a whole day out of doing that. That definitely is something that somebody's day could be spent just supporting those guys out in the field. Now, like you said, in smaller companies, it's de facto going to be the service manager and or the owner if the owner's a technical owner. Some owners are not technical owner, they're sales owners and they default to other owners. So it just depends. But if it is a good point to be made that the service man, because of the technology, now the service manager does have the bandwidth and the ability to not only be the service manager support, but also the tech support for the guys out there running the service calls as well. And he might not have been able to do that duty that way before because he's just too worried about running the department as a whole and making sure those guys are in places where they need to be, doing the things they need to do and stuff like that, and handling customer support, that sort of thing. Tech support, I think about it 2 ways. One, yes, supporting the actual techs out in the field, but also supporting the technology that those guys are using, because the more we lean on the technology, the more we need something, because we all know that technology is only as good as it works. The minute it don't work, it's not any good anymore. And if you're depending on it, then you need somebody that can get it back working pretty quickly or understand the best use case for it. And I think that having a tech support that's also a technology support for the trade tools that we use, it's probably going to be a big deal moving forward in today's world.
Yeah, I have an advisory board member just called me the other day, and he's wanting to slow down, and so he's wanting to become the CSR of the company, and he's wanting to hire somebody to replace him to run service. And so that would be a perfect opportunity for him to be able to do tech support because he's the CSR owner, everything, so he'll be able to just sit in the office and do tech support.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's a whole new position that's opening up for these guys that are a little bit savvy with what they're doing out there and can get their time in and absorb. That's one of the best advice you can give everybody is just be a sponge, learn the whole entire trade. Don't silo yourself. That way you're always going to have some kind of opportunity, because inside HVAC, there's so much you can do. There's so many different moving parts and pieces to it, whether it's residential or commercial, that you don't see that from the outside looking in. All they see is making the heating and air work, but there's so much that goes into actually doing that the right way that it behooves the guy to learn everything in the beginning and then find out where his specialty is versus just trying to focus on one thing right away. I think you need to open yourself up to the way everything works together and then go at it from that angle.
Yeah, when I got here, it was called air conditioning technology. And so that was one of the first things I did. I was like, we got to change the name. I said, because I got to teach heating, I got to teach ventilation, and I got to teach refrigeration. And I said, so we're missing 3 things there. And then that was the point, was they didn't want those three things taught originally, is because the older advisory board members wanted installers. They wanted them to know how to install ductwork, and that was about it. And maybe braze. And I was like, no, we got to teach them the whole thing. And so I brought refrigeration in and started teaching refrigeration first thing, because that's the refrigeration cycle, is refrigeration. And we do a tour at a local company here in town, next town over, and we go over and they've got rack refrigeration. And so we go in there. They've got a reversing valve just like we do, except for it's huge and it's called a 4-way valve instead of a reversing valve. They've got receivers, but instead of being 10 inches tall, they're 10 foot long. And so it's all the same stuff. The thing they have is the EPR and the oil separator. That's the only two really big things he's got in that shop that we don't have in our shop. And so that's what we teach here, is everything. I want them to know everything, because again, I've got one student moving to Wyoming this year. He ain't going to deal with any heat pumps. He's probably dealing with all gas and oil stuff. And he needed to know all of it, not just what we do here. Yeah,
absolutely. So you said we were having a conversation about the code officials. You want to tell me what was going on with that?
Yeah, in our code, it says that there's a few things, actually. You got to pull a permit on every construction job. So if it's 50% of the ductwork, or you're replacing a unit or installing a new unit, you're supposed to pull a permit. You're supposed to, if you're installing a unit, whether it's a change out or a new install, it's got to have a load calc. And then there's got to be a return path from every room. And those are three things that the only time any of those get checked is when there's an actual issue. And so the state, they require permits, but nobody ever actually pulls them. And then there's no penalty for somebody not pulling one. And so nobody ever pulls one. And so the state only gets called in when there's problems, usually. And so when they come in, they initially ask for a load calculation. That's the first thing they ask for as soon as they get there. But most of the cities, they do their own inspections, and they go and inspect, and they don't even look at load calculations unless there's a problem. And which I would probably say 70 to 90% of our units in Arkansas are probably oversized.
So do they collect the load calculation and just file it? That's what a lot of places do. And then they don't, at least they have it on file, but they don't ever look at it. They just put whatever the piece of paper is given to them on file and do it. Like Hamilton County, Cincinnati, Ohio, Hamilton County, that I'm most familiar with. City of Cincinnati is pretty good at collecting a load calculation. They'll may even make some comments on it or something like that if you don't have it all the way filled out or to the par that they fill. But they're definitely not like checking the calculation or checking the inputs or anything like that. Now on the commercial side, they do a full design review and plan review. And I have had them push back on some of my loads before, and not say they were too small, or too big, but I have had them say some were too small. You're not going to have enough heating, and I even had one inspector, like we went up and down the tree on it, and he made me change, even though I was using the ACA design temperature, he made me change it to something that he felt was more conducive to the area based on whatever anecdotal information he had. And those guys, there's nothing you could do. Like jurisdiction having authority is it. So like, boom, we had to change it to, and you all these loads, even backdate all these loads to change it to this design temperature that he all of a sudden wanted for some reason. But like by and large, those guys, like as far as I've ever seen, like they might say they collect them, but I don't know of many municipalities that are doing any kind of good load calculation review on them. Now I have had, I forget where it was, some municipality one time asked me to give them a proposal for putting together a design review class for those guys, for the code inspectors, but they didn't, whatever my number was, they didn't like it. They never got back with me. They never did the class. But that is a big education piece that's missing, I think, for the guys that are in the code, is like understanding loads, understanding why the code even says you need them. Because somehow it got voted into code. Somebody on some board saw value in the fact that you do need that. But that is as far as it ever went. They never gave these guys 1 ounce of education about what the thing is, why you need it, how it's used, what to look for, like any of that stuff. Most of these guys have very little to no idea. Now I do know, like some of them, like the city inspector in Cincinnati, a couple of them are ex-HVAC guys, so they get what a load calculation is. But even when they were doing HVAC, they weren't really doing load calculations, so they don't really understand the value of it and the use case and why it should be like the thing that sets the standard for what's going in the house there. So it's just a huge disconnect. You got any thoughts on how to get through to these guys? Because I certainly have tried and have not had much success.
No, that's where I've hit a wall, because the inspectors, they're underpaid and underappreciated, and they work with a bunch of pretty rough characters, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, carpenters, and they have to pick and choose what they can do. And with our state, if at least one of the inspectors that I dealt with in the past, I gave him a load calculation, and he looked at it, and it was just so happened I was so busy I couldn't do it myself, so I sent it off and had it done. And since it was a third party, he didn't even he reviewed it, but he didn't actually take it back and do it himself. But he was ex-HVAC, and so whenever he would come to your house, and if I did the load calc and gave it to him, he would take it back to his office and redo the load calc again to make sure it was correct.
Wow, that's amazing.
But that was one inspector that I don't believe is with us anymore. But yeah, he used to be really good at that.
That's great.
I've
never
state
had
inspector
that.
Now, the lead inspector, I believe him and some other people have got it now to where all inspectors in Arkansas have to take continuing education on HVAC. And so hopefully this is where maybe we can get some of this stuff in, where we teach them how to do load calculations, which most of them may already know. They just don't have the resources. And so maybe we can figure out how to get them the resources and get them checking these loads, because the state inspector yesterday flat out asked me, he said, "Why would you install a unit without doing a load calculation?" I said, "I wouldn't." He said, "Exactly." He said, "We need load calculations on every single house." And I said, "I agree. I fully agree." And so they get it. They don't have the time nor the money nor the manpower to be able to do it.
Yeah, and it's one of the bigger problems too is it's a garbage in, garbage out process. So even if you do get people doing it, like, you got to make sure they're doing everything. All the inputs have to be pretty precise to what the house is that's being built, down to a blower door test. It's another thing, like you definitely don't have any code anywhere in life saying that you have to do a blower door test on an HVAC change out. So you might get some duct leakage requirements, but you're definitely not getting blower door requirements. And so that's one thing there. If you don't know the infiltration in the blower door driven infiltration number for the load calculation, it's a lot less precise than it could be. So right there is one thing that's almost never getting done. Then you got people like, how many of these guys are actually getting in the attic and measuring insulation levels? How many of them are actually getting into crawl spaces and looking at the insulation and grading it the right way or doing some kind of weighted calculation for the highs and lows of the insulation to get the right R value for that needs to go in there? And how many of them are actually looking at the windows and seeing how many are double pane, how many are triple pane, how many are single pane, how many are wood, how many are aluminum? Like, it just goes on and on. Even with these LiDAR technologies that we have, these guys that own these softwares are encouraging these people that buy them to use the defaults that they have. They're calling them AI driven defaults and saying they're good enough. And really, it cheats the customer, or it cheats you as the contractor too, on getting the value of the data that's inside that load calculation, which is like thermally what that house is actually doing, and being able to understand the ins and outs of the comfort problems and the health problems and the IAQ problems that are going on in there. All that stuff is exposed during the course of doing an actual detailed load calculation. So it's a soapbox for me. It really irritates me that we have the technology to actually do a good load calculation in a reasonable amount of time, and people are still trying to find a way to shorten it. And I get it. If it's a change out situation and you got to have something, you got it right there and you're against 5 other guys, that's one thing, man. But like, you got customer base that you could go, you could pick the time you want to go in their house, make an appointment with them, make it one of their service calls, get the right load calculation, and have all kinds of information on their house into perpetuity. It's so obtainable now, and it's just being taught to these guys the wrong way. It's a checkbox for them instead of a valuable piece of information and data.
And you're right about the duct test and the air seal test. Both of those are very important. Now, again, if you guess, you're going to have a correct load calculation, but you're still guessing. So if you're guessing that it's a tight house or very tight house or not very tight, you're just guessing unless you're a blower door.
And also, too, those default, like the thing you're talking about, tight, semi-tight, loose, and average, which are the metrics, the default metrics inside the load calculation. Like, those things are nowhere near close. Every single house has a different level of infiltration. And like, even if you use those, there's such a wide range of metrics inside each one of those that the chance of actually getting the right size equipment, what you need, especially like the latent, is something that you can never know from that stuff, because the air infiltration measurement actually can help you predict what the latent load on the home is, how much, as far as like the air that it's bringing and how much that adds to the latent load. And then on the heating load, and heating dominated climates, it's insane the amount of load that's added by air infiltration or taken away by air infiltration. So if you don't know that piece of information and you're sizing a furnace or a heat pump, you're going to be way off, way off. And that's why some of these guys, like Manual J's, getting a little bit banged up out in public, because there's these guys going around doing billing calculations based on billing and weather data, and they're getting a more precise heating load calculation. And it's not because the Manual J methodology is that bad. It's because of the information going into it is that loose, that it's not really giving you a precise calculation that these guys with these billing calculations are coming up with. And if you're not having to worry about latent, it is probably a faster way to do a load calculation too, if you have both pieces of information right there and a software to dump them in.
Yeah. And I like that new software. The LiDAR that it uses, it's very accurate. And and to me, the way I did load calculations, because my computer originally sat at the house, I didn't have a laptop. So mine was a hard, regular desktop. And so I would go out, draw the house, write down all my measurements. I would write down all the windows, everything just like that. I would go back, draw it all out on WriteSoft, get it all done, and then it would do my load calculation. And I would still, every time, have to go in the back screen and make sure all my windows, ceilings, everything was exactly correct. And I would do that and make sure it was right, and then go on. Now with the new LiDAR stuff, you go through and it does all the drawing for you, and then you just go through and pick. Then you go in the back screens and make sure all the windows and doors and all that's correct. Make sure your measurements are right. And man, it cuts out a lot of time.
Yeah, but guys are even skirting that part. They're just using the defaults, the AI inputs for the back screen stuff, and not even filling in the back screen. And it could probably, because of the way sizings are, because we're half-ton increments, and then that's not even exactly correct, it can probably get you close enough doing that, as long as that there's not been a lot of major updates done to the house, but you're not getting the true value of the load calculation when it comes to the understanding thermally what's going on in the house. And it's not really, ACA says you need to do a precise load calculation, and that used to mean like you had to be pretty close in variances on what was going in to the house and whatnot. It's just there's two different ways of doing stuff being taught, and they have to come together in the middle somewhere so that we can be fast but also be correct and get the value out of what we're doing.
Yeah, definitely. That's honestly why I started teaching, was because my dad always complained about having to go behind other HVAC contractors and fix stuff. And I was like, that's just money for us. We get to come back and fix their work. And Dad's, yeah, but the customer's paying twice. And I was like, yeah. And so when they called me to teach, that was my first I had just flipped around. There was a unit that was 6 years old. The tech that installed it had been out there 12 times. He'd been out there every summer and every winter since he installed it. He called me out there. He wanted me to replace it. So I got out there, was like, man, this is only 6 years old. It's still under warranty. Why are you replacing it? And he said, they can't get it fixed. And so I put my gauges on it, and I got 180 suction pressure and 240 head pressure. I'm like, you don't have a piston in there. And so I go look, and sure enough, the piston's backwards. So I flip the piston around, turn it on, and take out like 3 pounds of refrigerant, and he was good to go. Yeah. And that dude just paid me a few $100s to fix his unit, when he probably paid this other guy probably $1,000 over the last 6 years coming back and forth to add refrigerant and take it out. And if it was working with a backwards piston, that means it was way oversized. So that right there, when they called me to ask me if I knew somebody wanted to teach, I think that was the part that I was like, yes, I want to teach, so this quits happening. Customers need the best from us. They don't need what we have right now. They need the best from us. And it's unfortunate, but in my 20 years of experience, I probably swapped out 2 pistons a year, just flipping them backwards because somebody would put them in wrong.
Oh, yeah. Stuff like that always happens. I used to do commercial tab for a long time. And I would always see fans put in backwards. They'd be spinning backwards. They'd be like, the stuff's not working. Yeah, the fan's spinning backwards. Your guy put it in the wrong way. And that's the first thing. Anytime you got bad airflow, the first thing we'll do when we're on the roof is check the way the fan's spinning to make sure it's spinning the wrong way. Because a lot of times people just put the dang fan in backwards. That stuff definitely happens when you're out there, and it's just a process. That's why teaching commissioning and startup and all that stuff is so important, because it's another step. The guys just set it and forget it a lot of times, and we see it all the time with residential furnaces and air handlers. The airflow is just not set up, man. They just set it down and leave up out of there, and then you ask them and they're like, yeah, our boss told us to get it done and get out of there. They didn't tell us to set it up right. And I've actually had owners tell me that's the way they run their shop. Yeah, we want them in and out. We got a service department. They'll come back and tune it up. Tune it up? What do you mean tune it up? They should be set it up. We should be setting it up. You shouldn't have to go back out for a service call 2 weeks after a system got installed. That's unacceptable. That's a callback that's costing them money. It's an unnecessary trip, and it irritates the homeowner, and over time erodes trust. If that has to keep happening, if they have to come back every time they supposedly fix something, then that's not a good look for you, and it's going to be harder and harder to compete out here in this private equity world that we're in.
I heard somebody say the other day, I believe it's the owner of a company, said that every callback cost him 4 service calls. He said, for every time I've got to send somebody back out, I've got to have you do 4 more service calls to make that back up.
Wow. Never heard it put that way. That's awesome.
But that was him, because he's not getting paid to go back and fix this unit. And then on top of that, he could have been doing another service call or 2. And so altogether, they lose 4 service calls because of that one callback. And I was like, I'd have to see the math, but that sounds right.
In the financial world, we call that compounding interest.
Yes.
That's
exactly it.
Yeah. That's the you suck tax.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had a couple advisory board members ask me, how do we need to make more money? I was like, less callbacks. I was like, how many times are you going back on units? We're going back on 3 or 4 a week. I was like, no, you need to go back on 1 or 2 a month. Callbacks are going to happen, but it's going to be ridiculous stuff. Not normal. You forgot the breaker, or you forgot to put the disconnect back in. Or I
think the national average is 7%. Guys that consider themselves great contractors run around a 2% callback. I had Bryn Cookski tell me that his company's doing a 0.5% callback since implementing MeasureQuick throughout the company. So that is a game. And MeasureQuick is a game changer on the callbacks. If you implement it, stick to your guns and do it right every day, and you're using the stuff the way that it's meant to be used, and the guys are asking questions when they need to. It's just one of the things that technology, one of the ways that we taking advantage of technology can really change the game for these guys out there.
And when you first use MeasureQuick, it takes a little bit because you've got to get used to everything. But once you're used to it, it doesn't take hardly any extra time. And if you're on that house for the second time and you've already got your porch drilled, you just pull out your plug and stick it in, and then pull it back out and put your plug back in.
Exactly.
And so you get to save all the drilling time. And it's coming, I believe. I believe something like MeasureQuick is going to have to be used eventually.
Yeah, I think it should be MeasureQuick. They're so far down that road. All right, we're running up on time here. So before we get off here, I'm going to do 2 things. One, that's just something I do with everybody, is if the world ended today and somebody asked you to leave advice on the wall for the society that comes after, what would that advice be?
Leave what you're working on better for the next person. So if you're working on a unit, I always pretend like it's going to be my unit. So if I'm working on your unit, I'm going to expect I'm coming back. And so when I get done with that job that day, I'm going to make it completely set up perfectly for the next person to come in there and make it easy on them. Just like here with me teaching, I have went through and built built books for every one of my classes. So just in case I'm not the next instructor, my next instructor will be able to come in, pick up these books, open it up, and go, oh, day 1, we do this. All right, great. And he can go through and do it.
It's so important. What you're talking about, documenting processes, that's so important. It's so important. Yep.
Leave it better than you found it.
100%. And last but not least, do you have any socials or any place you want to shout out where people can get a hold of you or talk to you if they want to, or chop it up?
HVACR educator. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, and somehow I guess Facebook's linked in with Instagram. So I guess I'm on Instagram too. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's Meta. The whole they own it all.
Yeah, I started getting followers on Instagram. I'm like, what in the world? And I got to looking. I was like, oh, I've been posting that from Facebook somehow.
Yeah, that's
So,
hilarious. That's awesome, though. All right, Brad, good stuff. Thanks for coming out, and I will talk to you next time.
thank you for having me.